at once, new roles, new dashboards, new delegation rules, and new hiring, all at the same time, that might feel very good in the first 2 or 3 weeks. It's very energetic, I would say. But then the old business pressure returns.
Welcome back to the show. Bernd, we've spent a lot of time talking about founder independence as a concept. We've talked about founder bottleneck, self-leadership, positioning, structure, leadership layers, and team ownership. But many founders have one very practical question. What do I actually do next Monday? They understand the model, they see the problem, they may even agree that their company depends too much on them. But then the week starts. The emails come in, a customer escalates a problem, a manager asks for a decision, and suddenly the founder is back in the old operating mode. So today, I want to talk about implementation. More specifically, your 90-day founder independence sprint. How do you take one part of the system and make it more stable in 90 days? And what should a founder work on first? And how do you avoid turning this into another well-intentioned change project that disappears after a few weeks? Let's start with the very basic idea. Why do you recommend a 90-day sprint for founder independence work?
I think that's a very good question. The timing is very crucial here. And the reason is that 90 days are long enough for real behavior to show up, but short enough to keep the attention. If you look on 30 days, that's usually you show initial enthusiasm. But a year, 365 days, that's too vague for operational focus. So what we have here is something in between. In 90 days, a founder can see whether a new routine holds under normal business pressure. And I think that's the key test here we are doing. If we are looking for something that survives the daily business, then things like customer pressure, employee questions, and the founder's own impatience. So it needs to survive the normal operations. Then 90 days, I think, is a good start.
Okay, I like that. 90 days, it fits with a quarter. You can start it at any time. It's got a defined end. But thinking through a little bit, why do so many founders try to change too much at one time?
That's also a very good question, because I think we are all guilty of that as founders or business owners, because we want to have that done very quickly. Founders are used also to solve many problems at once. That's why we are successful. That's why a business owner after 5 years is still in business. But that can also hold you back if you want to change something in an organization. That habit for you want to solve a lot of problems at once, that will you will have problems to build a company like that in the long term, especially if it comes to structural change. There it becomes really dangerous. If you, for example, as a business owner, introduce new meetings, everything at once, new roles, new dashboards, new delegation rules, and new hiring, all at the same time, that might feel very good in the first 2 or 3 weeks. It's very energetic, I would say. But then the old business pressure returns. And because no single change has enough attention, everything becomes weaker. Founder independence grows through sequence. So what that means is one active level, one main building block, one rhythm. And that is much less dramatic, but it's much more effective, in my opinion.
It sounds like the old adage, Rome was not built in a day.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And it's so difficult, I think, for entrepreneurs just to pick one thing to work on in spite of the people that have told us that's the right way to do it. But drilling into that just now, how does a founder choose the right building block for the 90 days? How do they pick one thing to work on?
Yeah, I believe the important part is where you start. And the building block should be from the lowest open level. What do I mean with that? We have this 5-level model. And if the lowest level is self-leadership, where you have problems, if that's unclear there, then start there. If it's positioning, the second level, if there's some things unclear, then you should start there with things to work on. If it's vision or if it's structure where you have the first real gap, start there. And one important part here, the visible pain may sit higher up in that. For example, the founder may feel frustrated with employees. So that would be on the 5th level. But the real cause may be unclear decision rights. So the 90-day sprint should focus on structure, the 4th level, not on employee leadership. So a good sprint starts at the place where one improvement creates leverage for everything above it.
So thinking back to your building blocks, the 5 levels of your model, can you give examples of 90-day building blocks for each of the 5 levels?
Yeah. So just for some examples, if we start at level 1, self-leadership is a problem. For a lot of small business owners, a good sprint could be defining 3 non-negotiable principles and then use them in real decisions for 90 days. If the 2nd level is a problem, so position and strategy, you're not profitable enough, then the sprint should be define the target customers, the company will stop actively pursuing, for example. So that would be one thing where you would work on to be successful on that level before you do something else. At the level 3, which means the vision, if you have an unclear vision, then the sprint could, for example, answer the core vision questions. Everything around products, markets, employees, and impact. We spoke about that in another episode. If the structure of the organization is the problem, so that's level 4, or processes, then the sprint could be to define decision spaces for the operational areas. So what can be decided by the team leads and what not? Things like that would be a start. And at level 5, the people leadership, the one I love to tell people, if you only have one thing you could change, then the sprint should be to establish weekly one-on-ones with all your direct reports. For me, the important point here is each building block is specific enough, or should be specific enough to be done and strong enough to change daily behavior. That's an important part here.
I want to clarify something here for our listeners. I ask you to give examples from each of the 5 levels, but I'm sure you're not saying you should do 5 different things in your first 90-day sprint. These are just examples of depending on your company and where the problem is.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Brian. I think that's needs to be very clear. Focus on one part for the 90 days, not on all 5 parts. And if you don't know where you have your biggest problem, you can do our independence check and you get an output, you get an answer on that already after 5 minutes. Before we continue, a quick question. Do you actually know how dependent your business is on you right now? Most founders have a gut feeling. They know too much runs through them, but they don't have a clear picture. Where exactly are they the bottleneck? And what would be the next logical step? And that's exactly why I created the Owner Independence Check. It's 16 simple questions. Takes about 5 minutes, and it shows you in a very concrete way where your business stands across 5 critical areas, from your own leadership to structure, strategy, and your team. At the end, you'll get a personalized result, not just a score, but a clear assessment of where you are today and what you should focus on next. The check is free, takes less than 5 minutes, and you'll find the link in the show notes.
So over many, many episodes, you put a lot of emphasis on a written commitment. Why does writing it down matter so much?
Well, I think we both know that. We are talking about things and then we say, yes, I will do that. And that's a great idea. And if you don't put it down in paper, if you don't write it down precisely, very often things look great in your head, but they aren't if you write it down. So writing creates precision. A founder can carry a vague intention for months, than without acting on it. And I think that's a very important part. The moment they write one sentence, the weakness of the intention becomes visible. And a strong commitment has a date. It has a clear result and a clear boundary. I give you an example. By September the 13th, all purchasing decisions up to $5,000 within approved budgets will be made by the operations manager without asking me, the founder. That sentence forces clarity, and that sentence forces you to take action. It defines the area, it defines the limit, it defines new behavior. So at once it's visible on your desk. It becomes harder to quietly abandon it or just, I just wanted to, but it's not. No, it is very clear here.
And I think there's also an intrinsic benefit in doing something like this. I think the operations manager would like it as well.
Yeah.
Wow, I don't have to go for approval for everything.
Absolutely. And it helps you to really think about, okay, what does that really mean for me? Where do I want to be involved and which things can I really give up?
Yep.
If you write it down, it makes it much more clear. And it doesn't feel nice if you do that, but it's so important.
So we've all been involved in 90-day exercises, quarterly plans, etc., that don't survive the first week or two.
Yeah.
You're in your books, you're very precise about 30-day and 60-day checks. So what should happen on day 30 and day 60?
I think it's important that you make an assessment, and it's good to put that into your calendar. So, for example, on day 30, you make your first reality check, and you should ask yourself, and you write it down on paper. What have I done in the 30 days to achieve my goal? Where did I already drift back into old behavior? And really just write it down. That helps. And which resistance showed up either from myself or from my employees, from my organization. Then you reflect everything. Yeah. Then for the next 30 days, you can adapt things. So day 60 then is the stabilization check. At that point, the sprint has moved beyond initial motivation. That's also an important part here, because you will not be motivated all 60 days long. But that check will help you to get on track again. So the founder then after 60 days should look for certain patterns, like are people using the new decision rule in this example? Are one happening consistently, or am I not doing them really weekly? Also, I wrote it down. Or are customers still being accepted outside the positioning if we said, well, we will not accept this kind of customers any longer? And then day 90, that's the honest balance after 90 days, of course. There, the question is simple. Does this building block now work without my daily force? So am I successful with what I wanted to achieve? And can I now go to a next level? If the answer is yes, then this part which you build now becomes part of your system. If the answer is mixed, the next sprint may have to stabilize the same area again before you go to a next.
So one of the challenges I've seen in myself and other founders and in some of the people we talk to, balancing our own work with involving the team. It's always a challenge on that balance. So how much should the founder involve the team in the sprint?
I think the founder should involve the team enough to make the change real. The team needs to know what is changing and why it matters and what behavior will be different. But be careful to be too enthusiastic about it. The founder should avoid turning a focused sprint into a company-wide transformation campaign and all this kind of stuff. For example, if the sprint is about decision rights and purchasing, the people affected by purchasing decisions should be involved. They should know about that. The entire company does not need a workshop for that. Practical involvement matters here more than broad communication and, we will do this and that, or I, as a founder, will do this and that. That's not necessary. The founder should communicate the new rule, explain the reason, invite questions, and then behave consistently.
So you've gone through numerous 90-day sprints like this yourself in your own companies. I have as well. You've done it with your clients. What are some of the most common mistakes you see during a 90-day sprint like this?
The most ones are, well, first mistake is choosing a topic that is too broad. Then nothing happens. So improve leadership. That's too broad. What exactly should we do? Establish weekly one-on-ones with 5 direct reports. That's very specific. That's a good one. Or the second mistake is starting several sprints at once. That's what I say. Focus on one thing. Don't do too many things. Because if you do, that creates activity without stability. Third mistake is announcing the change and then behaving in the old way. So if you're falling back, especially if you do it in a very exciting way, yes, we will change everything and this, and then nothing is changing at all. That's terrible. If the founder still decides every purchasing question, the new rule is dead. It doesn't work that way. And maybe the fourth mistake is measuring only mood. So if people may feel good after a workshop, but the operational test is whether decisions, meetings, and responsibilities actually change. And if they don't change, then nothing happens. Then it's not a good change.
How do we know when the sprint actually works?
I think the sprint worked when the new behavior survives a normal week without the founder constantly pushing it. If it's grinded into the organization, for example, a manager makes the defined decisions, or the one-on-ones happen even when the week is busy, or the sales team rejects an unsuitable customer without escalating to the founder. If you recognize that as a founder, that's a very good sign that it's working. Or a process is used by the people who really need it. That is the test. The result does not have to be perfect, and there might be mistakes. That's not the point. But it has to be stable enough to carry to the next step.
Okay, final question for today. What is the first step for a founder who wants to start this today?
I believe it's important that you as a founder start by writing down one sentence. And that's, in the next 90 days, I will stabilize this one building block. And now you need to choose the building block based on the lowest open level. Which is the lowest open level? Just check it out by doing our independent check. And then you put 4 dates in the calendar. That's important. Day 1, that's your commitment. Day 30, that's the review. We spoke about that. Day 60, that's the second review. And day 90, that's the balance, where you can see, did it work or didn't it work? And then that's important. You have to protect the sprint against the founder's biggest enemy. And that's the next urgent problem that looks more important than the system they are trying to build. That's the normal operations, the normal things you're doing day by day and important things. So if you fight against, or if you protect the sprint against things that changed there, then you have a good chance that you are successful with your sprint.
A lot of awesome nuggets in today's episode. Thank you, Bernd. I'm just going to try to summarize what we talked about today. Founder independence becomes practical when it is translated into one clear 90-day sprint. One thing. Founder chooses one building block on the lowest open level of your 5-level model. You write down the commitment. You review progress at day 30, 60, and 90, and you resist the temptation to start 5 other changes at the same time. The goal is simple. One part of the company becomes more stable without the founder's daily intervention. Then the next sprint can build on that. That is how founder independence becomes more than a good idea. It becomes a working system.
Right. Before you go, would your business still run if you stepped away for 3 months? If you're not sure, find out with the free owner independence check. You'll get a clear result and practical insights on where your business still depends on you and what to do about it. It takes about 5 minutes. It's completely free, and you'll find the link in the show notes.